our panel today. Our panel's really focusing on the near-term applications and opportunities of quantum sensing. Fantastic to see such an amazing turnout here for Quantum Australia #3. It's just growing from strength to strength each year. Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge and pay our respects also for the traditional custodians of the eastern Sydney coastal area, specifically the Bidjigal and Gadigal peoples of the Eora Nation. So here at RMIT University, we're passionate about translation of quantum technologies, and we're really interested in having those conversations with industry to identify those challenges and identify also opportunities for collaboration, and really challenge ourselves to test and benchmark our quantum science and technology systems, not only at the university but outside of the lab, in fields of interest or industry relevant situations, to get other people to use the technology to give us information and feedback to us as to what it does or what it doesn't do. So just a little plug, RMIT has a booth next door. We've got an army of people from the uni here today, so please, if you get a chance, swing past the booth and have a chat with our amazing superstars in quantum science and technology. All right, so I'd just like to now introduce our panel members for today. And I'd firstly like to introduce Emma Mitchell, who's a Senior Principal Research Scientist from CSIRO. I won't mention the bios, by the way. The bios in detail are in the material that hopefully you've collected, so I'm just going to mention everyone's titles. I'd like to now also introduce David Simpson, who is an Associate Professor in Physics and also as Chief Investigator of the Australian Centre of Excellence in Quantum Biotechnology. Also has a few hats and is a co-founder of FeBI Technologies, Chromos Laboratories and Phasor Quantum. It'd be great to chat a bit more about that today on this panel. I'd also now like to introduce Andrew Seedhouse, who is the Chief of Cyber Intelligence and National Security Division in the Defence Science and Technology Group for the Department of Defence. Finally, not least, at the end of our panel today, we have Chris Wood, who's the CTO or Chief Technology Officer of Infleqtion. So I think we have an amazing panel and really are looking forward to the conversation. Let's get stuck into it. All right, so first up, just going to go down the panel one by one. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how your organisation is working with quantum sensing technology. Might start with yourself, Emma, if that's okay.
Thank you, Brant. My name's Emma Mitchell. I work at CSIRO. I'm a team lead and project lead of quantum devices. Specifically for our sort of area, we're looking at using high TC superconducting electronics as sensitive magnetometers and have been doing so for quite a number of years, as Kathy Foley alluded to earlier, in terms of like LANTEM, which is a mineral exploration tool, and we've had those sensors out in the field for many years. We do both the device sensor fabrication, thin film deposition, design of devices, as well as the whole system build of our technology, all within CSIRO, and now also to obviously take it out into the field to, as Brant identified, get it in the hands of the users and the customers to put it through its paces and find out where issues arise and do that whole sort of iteration again to try and improve the sensing. CSIRO also has a quantum future science platform, which is run by Chris Vale, who's at this conference, and we've been identifying projects through that facility to fund in the more lower TRL, looking at quantum materials and other sorts of quantum devices. So 2D materials is one aspect. We have the quantum biotechnology work down in Clayton, and other things which will come to mind later, but that's sort of some of the areas. We've got algorithms, quite a lot of work in Data 61 on quantum algorithms, and that's sort of the general area at the moment that CSIRO is supporting quantum in.
Fantastic, thank you, Emma. I'm going to hand now over to David to tell us a little bit more about himself and his interest in quantum sensing technologies.
Sure, thanks, Brant. So my quantum journey at the University of Melbourne started back in 2006. So a lot of the work that we do uses the nitrogen vacancy defect in diamond as the preferred quantum system or quantum sensor. And the university's had a really rich history in the development of materials and now more so in the application of these sensors. We started off life working together with Brant back then, and Jim Rabot, who's also in the audience, looking at quantum communication applications. So we started off looking and trying to manufacture single NV centers in diamond for creating single photon sources. This was back in the world where quantum wasn't so cool and the investment wasn't so heavy as it is now. And then we really learned a lot about establishing companies and developing an ecosystem way back when around quantum communication. And then the focus for me really shifted to quantum sensing in the early, well, probably mid-2000s. Now I do a lot of work with trying to apply these quantum sensors into biological systems. So that's one of my passions that I have at the moment.
Great. Thank you, David. Now I'd like to hand over to Andrew.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I've had a career of nearly 40 years now in defence. That's covering quite a broad spread of topics, but mostly there's a common theme which has been surveillance and sensing, mostly in the sneaky-weaky area. So that's not too much that we publish. The key thing there, if I just dwell on my current role, to update you, because the data's out, I'm head of space intelligence, national security and cyber, and you will note that doesn't have the word quantum in it. And that's deliberate because my part of the game is problem facing. So I talk to all the users, the military folks, about what it is they can't do, what they're frightened of, what are the surprises they may see, and I then work with people also in my own organisation, like Pina, who was up here earlier this morning, and talk to them about what is the art of the possible, and they've got the connections to industries, universities, and I then formulate, program, and I have to go and rattle the tin and get the cash and get them together to do things. So I commission work like that. Our main point on quantum at the moment is we're very much in the discovery mode in terms of what is the impact this stuff going to have on us, and what disruption will it make. The thing we don't like in defence is being surprised, because somebody turning up with a capability we don't know about is really scary. We'd like to be there first. That's my job.
Thanks again, Andrew. And now I'm just going to hand over to Chris to say a few words.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Brant. And thank you all here from Australia. I appreciate the invite. First time here. I'm loving it so far. My name is Chris Wood, and my career goes back to the early days of Bose-Einstein condensates and atomic physics at Colorado and the University of Colorado, and continued on to the early days of the first quantum logic gate at NIST as well. But then I switched gears and went into industry for about 25 years. So I've been building all manner of lasers and sensors and systems for about 25, 28 years, and deploying them even to space. And so I was fortunate to be able to come back to Infleqtion and get back to my quantum roots at a time when I think what we're all realizing here is quantum needs to start building these things and turning them into deployed systems. And that's a passion of mine, so I have the lucky fate of being in a job I love and a good fit. Infleqtion is in its 17th year now, and we build all manner of quantum things. We've been building glass cells for atomic sensor systems for the better part of those 16 years. This is for a cold atom system, magneto-optic traps, all the way up to Bose-Einstein condensates. We build those systems into ion traps. We have packaged ion traps. We have a whole generation of new cells that are used for our quantum computers that have very unique structures, electrode control inside the vacuum cells. We sell these widely to the entire quantum ecosystem. We sell the vacuum systems to the system, to the community. We also have a quantum software division that we also sell services to widely to the industry as well. And that's not just quantum error correction and full stack systems for compute, but it is also AI and machine learning. And what we're seeing is really a growth area of quantum inspired algorithms that aren't necessarily applied to compute, but using the techniques of quantum that are being developed. So yeah.
Great. Thanks very much, Chris. As you can see, there's a breadth of knowledge and experience on this panel. So if you do want to ask a question, there's a great opportunity through the website, through the QR code. Please get your questions ready. There's a breadth of expertise on the panel here. It's a great opportunity to ask a question or two today. So, all right. So let's break the ice a little bit. And I'm just wondering if I'm just going to throw an open question to the panel here. For those that are less familiar with the tech, and there may be some of those in the room, can you maybe give us a few words about what the difference might be what's the difference between classical sensing and quantum sensing technologies? I might start with yourself, Emma.
Okay. I'll use our LANTEM example for as a good one to start with. So one of the first things that they did with LANTEM was to use these high temperature superconducting squids to show an advantage over the conventional sensing. And for superconducting devices, that advantage comes through what's called a Josephson junction. They are kind of the equivalent in superconducting electronics that the transistor is in semiconductors. They are very sensitive to magnetic fields, and then you put a couple of Josephson junctions in a superconducting loop. You've also then got flux quantization, and what happens is you get a combination of those two quantum effects that gives you super duper sensitivity to magnetic fields, 10 to the minus 8 of a flux quantum. So by taking those systems out into the real world and comparing them to what the mining exploration companies were using at the time to explore, we showed definite advantage in being able to see signals from buried ore bodies that were far deeper than what the conventional systems were seeing, and also being able to give more detail to those mineral deposits, so it made more accurately deciding where to drill, and therefore spending less money, less damage to the environment by better defining that buried ore body. So that's the sort of advantages that quantum sensing can bring, and something that as to help your customer, you need to sort of explain and actually demonstrate for them the advantage to them for their own needs.
Thanks very much, Emma. I think really that work really forged the path, forged that path for many of the development work that's happening at the moment within Australia and around the globe. And I really think we have a lot to thank the team at CSIRO for forging that path forward. Would anyone else like to add any other comments about the differences between classical and quantum sensing technology?
Sure, so I'll give my perspective. I think this is controversial maybe in terms of the quantum community. I feel like half the room would be split into those that believe quantum systems need to exhibit superposition and entanglement and these sorts of things. And there's another sort of community which takes a more broader, holistic view of what quantum systems are and whether just a quantum system on its own is sufficient. In a lot of the work that we're doing in the companies that we're trying to translate research, quantum advantage comes in different ways. So in some of the applications we're trying to develop in the biomedical sphere, application comes from the size of the sensors. So we're using nanodiamond material so we can get a very close interaction with the thing that we're trying to detect. In other applications, sensitivity is the king. So we're trying to develop technologies to image electrical signals from neurons, for example. So in that case, we need better sensitivity than we can get from classical systems. In the defence space, this was touched on by Emily before, we're trying to get advantage in terms of accuracy and low drift to develop magnetic navigation systems in GPS-denied environments. So I think for me, I'm not so passionate about whether the system actually behaves quantum mechanically or we can control the quantum mechanical nature of the system, but just does it provide an advantage in general that classical systems can't provide?
Well, should we be disciplined and go as we're going along? Because this is an uncanny question for me, because it was only last night over the family dinner we were discussing quantum 1 versus quantum 2. So somebody was eardropping on us, conversation. It didn't conclude very well, I hasten to add, but I won't go into that. For me, in sensing, I've been involved a long time, it's been dominated by the electromagnetic spectrum and the way we sense that directly, and also the PN junction. That's where I started off with the quantum one stuff. Really for me now, very non-technical response is when we start looking at what are those subatomic elements do and the weird characteristics that you then get, exploiting those to do things and create an ability to measure phenomena we couldn't measure before, or measure it whereby the classic sensing techniques to disrupt it are not applicable. And that drives me in the military area just because we can then create robust stuff. So that's for me, that's the big delta between the two.
Thank you.
I think you can, I love this debate, but I also think you can take it a little too far. I love quantum mechanics, but some people would argue that simple spectroscopy, like an atomic clock, isn't a quantum system because it doesn't have entanglement and superposition. Well, that's probably slicing things a little too thin, because of course it's quantum mechanics, deep spectroscopic nature of that device. You can fold squeezing into that, and then of course you're back to, okay, now it's quantum. But the quantum industry is going to have a selection of all of these things. The devices from spectroscopy to all the way to computers that use every aspect of quantum mechanics, but within an industry, it's all going to be quantum. And at the end of the day, one interesting point is if we're successful, our customers don't care, right? It has to work, it has to be deployed, it has to be able to strap to someone's head and see the neurons in their brain firing, that sort of thing. So I think, I love the debate, but quantum is quantum.
Fantastic. So now that we've broken the ice a little bit, I want to come back to the theme of this panel discussion about near-term applications and opportunities of quantum sensing. I'm just going to throw the question out there. What are the most likely near-term applications, and by near-term, within the next 5 years?
I'll have a go because I think you've started to see some of the illustrations that Emily put up just to go for us within defence. For us, we're looking and have had success in the development of clocks and precision timing. We've been looking at building those and deploying them. There's part of the team here from Uni South Australia. I'm sorry, I got the wrong one. It's Adelaide, they'll shoot me.
Joining.
Yeah, I'll leave the other door. So, really for that means that's something that we could probably move forward quickly. We can use it to improve the performance of existing systems like radars very quickly. We can use them very quickly to enhance communications as well. Beyond that, I'll just give you one more example of where we're looking at is in the position measurement techniques, and this is no surprise, a lot of people are studying these. We think we can bring technology forward there, and we're trying to explore how we can use that to augment some of the technologies we're trying to develop for autonomous systems, and also some of the more difficult areas where we're being contested in an environment where things are being challenged. But those two areas are going pretty fast, and really it's just the matter of our policies and finances and stuff that stop them getting there, I think.
I think one area is, of course, Infleqtion is very bullish on clocks. We have a whole product line of clocks, and that's going to be a great business for us in the quantum industry. But I think we might also be surprised by some others like magnetometry, where there is obviously, most of the press comes from, at least in this crowd, and the defense people especially, comes from the PNT, magnetic navigation side of things. There is already thousands of magnetometers being sold every year for brain imaging, magnetoencephalography, and it's going to move into magnetocardiography, and those two applications probably will have higher volume than any of the PNT stuff does. May displace the squids completely, so that's an example of a near-term opportunity. And note that I never said the word compute in those last sentences, I just said it. And the other one will be quantum RF sensors. That Infleqtion has a lot of work in that area. That, especially with a few recent announcements that we've seen, will probably push that one much faster in the next year or two.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I'm pretty bullish about what we can achieve in the next 5 years. I think that landscape's changed over the last couple of years. I've really seen an acceleration from a number of companies in Australia to get to the point where they're actually ready to field and commercialise products at scale. So I think the exciting ones for me, I think Australia competes really well in a number of different technologies. So I've already mentioned magnetometry. I think gravimeters are another big one, atomic clocks, and we're going to hear from Andre in the keynote after this about some of the work that Quantex is doing. I think those three we're having real sort of leadership in. And I'm also really excited about the clinical application. So you mentioned MEG and MCG. I think there's a real opportunity. People are using these systems now, so optically pumped magnetometers are really have made tremendous strides, and now they're starting to put helmets on kids and getting brain signals from children these days, and that's actually changing the clinical landscape. So this is an area where quantum sensors are actually having an impact now. So it's not just waiting for 5 years to see what's happening, they're actually out in the field, and so I'm very excited to see what can come in the next 5 years.
From
Yep.
your perspective, Emma, for CSIRO?
Sure. From CSIRO's perspective, and actually my own, first of all, MEG has been done by squids for a long time now. The Hearing Hub at Macquarie University uses low TC squids for all that sort of brain imaging. And so obviously medical is always a good uptake of technology that's pushing boundaries. One of the, apart from all the other technologies that have been mentioned, I think possibly some of the ancillary development of perhaps computing around or signal readout from some of these quantum sensors. I know there's quite a bit of work going on, just even with like dilution refrigerators, trying to get the signals from the mixing chamber back up to room temperature. There's a whole lot of work being done to improve the efficiency of those sorts of systems and limiting the amount of heat being dispelled. Superconducting electronics, there is quite a lot of work in the US on what they call rapid single flux quanta technology, which is looking at A to D converters, all that signal processing using superconducting sensors and logic, which reduce the thermal load for equipment. So I think some of those sorts of things, because there's a push for, say, quantum computing, that's not the only benefit. There's also, it's pushing the technology to enable that will also come out of that in the near term and possibly be used before, a real functional quantum computer comes on board. So that would be really great.
Can I just build on something? Because there's, you gave me the 5-year piece, and most of that 5 years isn't a technological timescale. Again, it's just going to come from defence. So if someone's going to be operational in 5 years, they've got to be able to work with a prime contractor of a system we've already got. They've got to have the sort of finances and capacity in place to work with defence. We're challenging. And they've got to have that maturity of product that can be tested and verified, and they can support it through the through life of the system. And that's the problem when it comes to adopting these sort of technologies, is having those suppliers that have that technology in those 5 years. So actually it's very constraining in terms of what could be used in that timescale, hence my only 2 comments. I think some of the other areas for other fields may be able to get into those markets faster, but defence is a lot harder. Yeah.
That actually ties in really nicely to the next next question, the next direction that I'd like to go. We heard from Emily before talking about the ASCA vision, and what I'm just going to pose to the panel is what do we need to do? What's currently happening in terms of acceleration of these near-term applications, and what do we need? Where might some gaps be in terms of acceleration?
Okay. Do you want me to kick that one off?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah. No worries.
I've been itching for this one because the last panel said, it's like the Romans, what has AUKUS ever done for us? And I wanted to get to that. But I'll start off with, first of all, in terms of what we've been, the context for DSTG is that we've been on a road for 3 or 4 years now with the Starshot and those got us into the community, got us familiar with what we can do, got some partners both nationally, internationally, and we're progressing the technology a second per second. So now we're talking about acceleration, so
Exactly.
there's anticipation that you could do more than that. And we've got 2 accelerators that exist. So Emily has stood up the one, which is the Promise Government, and been pushing around the country to excite folks into the fact that we are wanting to go faster on things, and putting tools in there to do that. So I won't repeat what Emily has done there, but that does give us that opportunity. And normally for acceleration, it means look for the right problems, be very careful what you select, focus and put your effort into that and make it go fast. And also, one of the things that Emily would probably preach about is the fact that our clients, our users, have to promise to use what we're investing in. And that is the key accelerator in defense. The other accelerator is AUKUS Pillar 2. Now, why is that accelerated? Because the mission of AUKUS is to get advanced technology and capability into the hands of the users faster than we would do if we were working on our own, and using the 3 nations to do that. So it's both acceleration and collaboration. I happen to be the co-chair of the Qantas AUKUS Pillar 2 working group. And so I have chums in the audience, there's one just sitting there from the UK, where we have been this week and part of this last week and this week working up what our programs and collaborations are. We are working a number of key theme areas that are military based to try and get who has got a widget A that is most advanced of the 3 nations that will go with widget B from another nation. That means that we could do something and demonstrate it quicker than we could have done on our own, and get those things operational very quickly. Now, for us, that actually is going to be within this decade. I'm not being too bullish about me being in 3 years or 5 years, because looking at the program we put together, but if we're looking at this decade, I'm going to say for those technologies we're looking at, that is a lot faster than we could do it on our own. So it will mean that the ADF will get the opportunity to adopt quantum technology faster than if we hadn't been in Pillar 2. That's why we're doing it.
I like this idea of speed, acceleration, and if I could wave my magic wand and ask governments to do one thing, it would be to take a more active and aggressive role in being that early adopter. Right. And what do I mean by that? I mean that governments are always typically a first adopter or early adopter. In quantum, they have another problem because it's not being done by the traditional defense industry. It's being done by smaller companies, sometimes really small, up to mid-sized companies. And the government can make a very strategic, accelerating move by being more aggressive about not just funding the research, but funding the first 10, fund the first 50. That actually will push this industry faster to get the engineering done and get it to deployment. Because if they don't do that, and industry or a university or a government lab has developed a prototype, it's going to sit there for a while. Someone has to pick it up. You got to sell it to the defense primes, and they finally establish a program for it. There's a massive delay there. There's funding that has to happen, or that small company has to go out and get venture capital funding to get it done. Whereas if the government said, I'm not going to fund the prototype, and if you're successful, I will also fund the first 10 coming off your low-rate production line, that would be magical in terms of speeding things up.
Fantastic. And yeah, any other thoughts there from yourself, Emma, or David, with regards to fast tracking or accelerating these near-term opportunities?
I would just reiterate that there's the customer pull will always help accelerate things. If you can demonstrate some advantage to them, whatever that may be, that over their competition, then that will often help pull you forward and invest more and also focus.
Great.
I think from my perspective, I think defence has played a really important role in accelerating a lot of the quantum technologies, and that's come through programs like the Next Generation Technology Fund, DIH, and now ASCA. But I think that it's important to really emphasise that defence is not the only game, and so people that are developing these quantum sensors need to think about what are the dual applications that these sensors can have to create new markets beyond defence, because defence is slow, and I'll leave it at that. So I think in other forms of acceleration, I think in Australia have definitely come through Centre of Excellences. So we've seen this a lot with quantum computing, and we're starting to see that now with sensing. So we've had specific quantum centres like Equus. I'm part of a new Centre of Excellence around quantum biotechnology. So these are new large-scale initiatives that are funding quantum sensing research at significant scale. So I think that acceleration can also be done through those sorts of programs. And I really liked what Kathy talked about in that first panel around mobility and empowering people to actually have a go at commercialising and translating quantum sensing technology. So having mobility, being allowed to have a shot at starting a company. If it doesn't succeed, you can come back, you know, to a university position, for example, I think is a really interesting idea, because not every idea is going to work, not every company is going to work, but how do we foster that environment to really help that acceleration, I think.
Thanks for everyone for sharing those thoughts. I think the previous panel actually raised some very interesting questions, and there was another point that was raised from Dimitri around, is the development of quantum sensors under-resourced? So that's an interesting question maybe I might pose to the panel, but also maybe on that, with that lens or that mindset, you know, it's great to have these aspirations towards fast-tracking and speeding up the process, but what are some of the challenges that we might experience over the next 5 years that we can, if we had a crystal ball, what might some of those challenges be, possibly in regulatory requirements? And I'm conscious of what Roger also mentioned in the previous session around appropriate regulation, but also supply chain and any manufacturing challenges. So yeah, just looking at the next 5 years, great to have these aspirations, but what might some of the challenges be? And I might actually throw to Chris, you know, with an Infleqtion hat. I guess you're dealing with supply chain challenges, maybe not every day, but regularly. I just wonder if you share some thoughts on your how you work through these supply chain challenges.
Yeah, you know, supply chain has a couple different pillars, to use that word. You have a traditional set of supply chain issues from just materials procurement, that sort of thing. For us, you know, there's super polished glass. A lot of the polishing compounds come from China in the East. Other aspects, thin film lithium niobate is becoming very central to photonics, and especially quantum photonics. Most of that comes from China as well. So there's very much a traditional supply chain problem, especially when you paint on a layer of defense. You also have a challenge in the supply chain of sovereign capabilities, and this is where the AUKUS discussion may come back into it, and that is, let's say we want to build a specialized photonics foundry for quantum and deployed quantum sensors. Do we need one in Australia and the US and the UK, or can we find a way to collaborate and get that done and save $500 million? Maybe. I can see both sides of that argument. Do we need to have everything in all three countries, or can we break down some barriers and do a better job there? And the final supply chain issue, I think, is a question of volumes. Quantum is going to have to walk before it runs, and so we collectively have a challenge of, I can't sell 1,000 of this sensor yet, but I will eventually. But in the meantime, I have a supply chain challenge just because I have low volumes to start, and I have to convince those suppliers that when I ask for a quote of 10,000 or 100,000, I will get there, and have them believe me on that, and then fight through the battle of an entire supply chain when you're only buying 10 of something.
Thanks, Chris. Maybe Emma, can you maybe share some thoughts and insights from a CSIRO perspective about supply chain challenges?
Sure. We've certainly been suffering from supply chain issues, as I'm sure everyone else has. It depends a little bit on what materials you're using. If you're fortunate enough to be compatible with, say, things like silicon fabrication, which a lot of the superconducting qubit work is currently compatible with, and that that can help you. In our situation, we're actually not compatible with silicon, so we then have to work harder to get substrates that are a good enough quality and not affect the performance of our devices and our films that we grow. So that's sort of something that is difficult, but trying to do more of a sovereign capability type approach to that can help. Keeping your options open, I guess, and looking around for other materials, other suppliers. Yes, anticipating those shortfalls is really difficult. If what happened to us is that you're working on some new quantum material that is not compatible with, say, silicon, or requires epitaxial growth like it does for us, so you're very dependent on those sort of basic materials, you do need to probably take more charge of your supply chain and look at resourcing some creative ways of getting sovereign capability or a direct link, and hopefully things like AUKUS will help Australia and the UK and ourselves sort of share that burden, as it were.
Definitely. Any other thoughts with regards to supply chain or manufacturing?
I think there's another big issue I sort of touched on a little bit earlier. If you look at the slide that Kath put up with all the different quantum businesses up there, we don't buy from them. We buy from companies that buy from companies that buy from them. And there's a risk appetite chain which is tied to the fact that at the top end of the chain is public money and military usage. And the risk appetite is a real problem when it comes to engaging new technologies. People are very adverse. Now, it's not to say we're not addressing it, because there's some great example where we've reached out recently with some underwater vehicle novel, different manufacturers that are different. They're slightly smaller companies, and trying to encourage them and support them in country to do things, and we hope that they will have more aptitude for taking the risk. But at the end of the day, of course, we're spending public money, and you can see the headlines, oh, it's not working, and so I think that's a biggie actually. Is that risk appetite up the supply chain for people, as well as all the things you mentioned about trying to get assured access. And again, that's another military thing. I don't want to run out of something when I'm in a bad place.
The defense industry has to develop deeper strategic partnerships with the quantum industry to help bridge that gap.
We're not there.
And if I could just flip it around a little bit, you've got maybe an example or two of Australia's strengths in this area, in manufacturing or supply chain, some success stories that you could share as inspiration for other supply chain challenges in the community. Any success stories you might be able to share?
Well, out of the quantum field, you can find success stories where we could illustrate that after about a decade of research in high-frequency radar, we became the world experts at it and deploy the best systems in the world and build them here. So there was a story to tell in terms of sticking at it for decades in investment to get there. We know that, but we're going to do that on a few things. So picking them is hard.
All right, now I can see the questions are coming in thick and fast online, which is fantastic. Thanks everyone for posting questions. You still do have a window of time to post those questions. I actually might throw to one of these questions here online, and I'm just going to throw, this is a question effectively without notice, but coming back to AUKUS. AUKUS makes an appearance in a few of these questions, I have to say. The one that's got the most amount of likes so far is, how specifically has AUKUS facilitated collaboration between countries? So maybe Andrew, with your AUKUS hat on.
That's, of course, I naturally I'll tell you explicitly what we're doing in AUKUS. No. So that's the answer, that's easy. But the way these things go, each working group really just start off the same way. It is a full and open, highly classified exchange of information about current investments in each of the three nations. We do a total exploration of what is going on in the field, and there are a number of topics in AUKUS Pillar 2. And then, once we agreed that we've got an opportunity to accelerate, we then start putting the legalese around it so that the classified information can travel between us. When we start looking at activities that are going fast and developing, and I know that we have an activity, for example, in identification of ships for maritime patrol aircraft, that has happened with a full exchange of software between the nations. We're also developing AI techniques which enable us to, one country is training it, another one's flying the sensor, another one is going to then update the system while it's flying and getting those consistencies working, and that's the AI working group I'm aware about what they're doing. With us in Quantum, we are putting together, for example, what we euphemistically call a clock off. So we're going to have a competition about who's got the most accurate clock. I don't know how you do that, who's got the most, where's the reference, but we are going to do that, and that'll give us the, that's the best clock, right, let's get that moving faster. So that, I'm not answering it directly because I can't, but those are the illustrations of the things that are going, and we are under huge pressure to go as fast as we can. And if we come up with, oh, we're going to study something for a few years, we get told off.
Going back to the supply chain question, and maybe Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong here, but wouldn't it be great if AUKUS could have a framework where you could ease the restrictions on ITAR, at least from a US point of view, to, I mean, if we're willing to come to each other's defenses, can't we share some information on supply chain and ease the craziness we have to go through on the State Department and a TAA to do some of this stuff? It seems like it ought to be workable.
So there are two working groups in Pillar 2. One is looking at innovation, another one looking at information sharing. That is directly addressing the legalese and changing legislation in that area. I can't report here and now on that because people have to sign stuff. But that is exactly what we're doing. Yeah, because that was identified very early on. But if we're going to do this, the free flow of ideas and the ability for industries to sell to each other had to occur within that three-nation bubble.
Okay, I might read out one of the other questions that's come through around staffing. So where are the staff going to come from to develop, exploit, and move quantum technologies forward? Where will they come from? The future people that are going to be essential for this workforce. I'm not sure who'd like to comment on that,
yeah,
Emma?
I can comment on that. We've been employing a few people over the last couple of years with our projects and have had a lot of trouble attracting people with quantum background, probably not surprisingly. And what we've found though is pick good people that have good backgrounds and the right attitude and train them, because to be honest, not many people will come out of university with a lot of knowledge on superconductivity, for example. It's actually probably only 1 or 2 hours of lectures these days in a standard Bachelor of Science. So everyone, including myself, had to upskill on that sort of area and try and get people in and mentor them with those that have the knowledge. We've got quite a good honorary fellow scheme at CSIRO, so those people that have got, we've got a very strong theoretician in the area. We've got other people like Keith Leslie, who was with Kathy Foley on the LANTAM work, and he's still working with us in the labs. As you start to develop your technology, you are going to rely more on engineers as well, so we've definitely been employing engineers into our projects, and there's quite a few people that sort of sit between scientist and engineer as well, and we're certainly utilising their knowledge and background, so that's some of the ways that we're getting around it at the moment.
Thanks, Emma. It's great to see that initiative from CSIRO, I have to say, recruiting heavily as much as possible in the sector. Andrew, did you want to add to that?
I just wanted to lean on an example in DSTG. Pina, sitting in the far back there in the bright pink jacket, her team had to be created. We didn't have a quantum team in DSTG 4 or 5 years ago. And to do that, we started off with a partnership with the university and essentially recruited people, but put them in the university for years to do research and learn. And that team is now part of Pina's team, and then we're in the next phase of doing that. So we've been looking at creating capability just for ourselves like that. more generally, we sponsor activities through things like the Starshot, which is the community piece. And I must add, on a personal note, I'm doing my bit because I've got a daughter who's a quantum physicist. So I've got a part share in making one.
I think the point you touched on there is a really, really important one, that transition between academia, industry, academia, spending time in someone else's location. I think it will be a valuable experience, and I think DSTG also forged the way heavily there a number of years ago with embedding people's staff in certain teams in certain locations around the country to learn what's happening at the coalface and meet the team, work how they understand how they work. I really think, again, we've got a lot to thank DSTG for in that space. That actually sort of really ties us into the next question actually that's come through online around of the various quantum sensing technologies that we've discussed today, will there be a single winner or do we potentially see quantum sensing working in fusion with other quantum sensors or potentially conventional or classical sensing solutions? So will there be a winner?
There's either
Chris?
that's either an investment banker looking for his next bet,
Yeah, exactly.
or it's a very good question.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone.
No.
Yeah, no, I don't think there will be a single winner. I think it's going to end up being fairly diverse. I think, especially for a handful of these quantum sensors, there will be an integration of classical and quantum to get it done. In the near term, inertial is going to be a marriage of a classical inertial sensor and a quantum inertial sensor for many years, I would say. And the same thing for quantum RF. It's not clear exactly how that system is going to be architected. It could be that the quantum piece of it is the full receiver, or it could be that the quantum piece of the quantum RF receiver is just essentially a replacement of the low noise amplifier and a traditional antenna. You're going to see a lot of creativity in terms of hybrid systems that are a little bit of both, and I think it's going to end up being pretty diverse.
I think if we talk about a winner, I think society will be the winner. I think, yeah, I don't think there's been a clear technology that's a standout that you can hold up that's producing quantum sensors at scale at the moment. I don't think there's a golden bullet. I think there's lots of great opportunity out there, but I think we'll all benefit in the next sort of 5 to 10 years.
I think with in the magnetometry space, for instance, there's quite a range of different sensors, and they all have their specific sweet spots. So, there might be frequency of operation or their noise floor or something like that. So there won't be, it'll be horses for courses, really, depending on what the application is. So I think it will definitely require more than one sensor or one quantum solution for a particular problem.
My answer starts with I haven't got a clue, and history doesn't normally point to that sort of thing happening because we have sensor technologies which are quite broad. Or in the more classic space, there wasn't a winner. I think that's the thing that is quite exciting is that I know of things coming down the line that can measure things I've never measured before, and the excitement for me is the eureka bit when I work out what to do with it. And I think that's the bit I'm more excited about than there being a single winner. I don't think there will. There may be in classes, like these clocks win, this RF sensor wins, that sort of thing. I think that's what you were saying. But I don't think there'll be a king, queen of it all. Yep.
So who should we be working with that you think that we're not currently working with the community? Is everyone in the tent, do you think, or are there industries that we should still be working with that we're not currently possibly working with?
Okay. So I'm going to abstain as a government official because I can't point you at things.
I think a lot of the work that we do, we're starting to engage more with industry. So we've had very successful partnerships with small to medium enterprise companies, and that's really opened our eyes to how we need to engineer and translate technologies out of the lab. So I think universities as a whole are starting to recognise commercialisation as a really important thing, and they're starting to foster more engagement between universities and industry. So I think that part is going really well. I think defence has really opened up, and we've had extraordinary collaboration with defence in recent years. So that that engagement has really led to wonderful outcomes as well. So I think we're doing that well. And then on the sort of biotechnology side, which is the other half of what I do, I think there's probably further engagement in education on that side of things. I think quantum technology is a very weird thing for them, and understanding how they could use quantum sensors for clinical applications, for example, is a really foreign concept. So hopefully in the next few years we can have more engagement with that community from my perspective.
Well said.
So look, yeah, so I just wanted to say thanks so much for all the questions that have come in online. It's been some very interesting questions and pertinent to this particular panel discussion today. And before I close out the session today, I just wanted to pose one final question to each of the panel members. And that final question is, what future potential quantum sensing application excites you the most? Who'd like to go first?
For me, it's not actually an application. It's I would expand that and say deployment, right? Because there's going to be about 5 or 6 of these that get deployed, and they're really going to change the landscape and change things, but not unless they get deployed. So that's, for me, the most exciting piece of it is turning this into reality.
So I can only answer as a personal view.
Okay.
Okay. Because again, looking at the field of things that are coming up, again, coming into this category of doing things I can't do, and anomaly detection of things that are moving behind large lumps of things, be they water or soil, can't do that very well, and there's potential to do that, and I can't wait to be able to do that.
Fantastic.
A bit cryptic.
I would go back actually and make one
on
caveat. Now I got it. You know, I think space is going to be fascinating. Quantum is going to find its natural home in space, where it's the superpowers of quantum are really going to shine. And you know, one of the things that fascinates me is putting one of these lattice clocks in space, and going back to my roots all the way in grad school in precision measurement, and putting a clock capable of seeing 10 to the minus 19, 10 to the minus 21 digits in an elliptical orbit, and measuring general relativity, flying it into the sun, potentially because there's a theory that there's a massive amount of dark matter around the sun. So finally we could detect dark matter, and that will be enabled by quantum sensors.
I'm glad you mentioned space, Chris, and we haven't really unpacked that greatly today, but there's a whole series of opportunities there I see with a lot of the sensing technologies to test and evaluate, benchmark the performance of their sensors in space simulated conditions. And I think a lot of our collaborators in the room internationally as well have significant efforts in this evaluation program, and I think we can lean a lot on our partners also, in addition to the expertise we have in the country in testing and evaluating and benchmarking space-ready quantum sensing technology. David, what excites you about the future?
I'll give you my complete biased view. So I think I'm very passionate about the biotechnology and clinical applications of quantum sensors. And Warwick Bowen framed a nice way to put it, the quantum for good. And so the stuff that we're trying to do, for example, we're trying to develop new clinical assays to improve the accuracy of ion tests, which is a huge problem for a third of the world's population. The way that we do our ion tests at the moment are not accurate for many of the population. So that's one thing that we're trying to look at. The other one is precision medicine, trying to develop new ways to understand how our brains function and how drugs affect the electrical activity of brains. So I feel like, the thing that gets me up in the morning is trying to develop new technology that can have a real impact on either people's health or outcomes.
Thanks, David. And Emma, final words?
Thanks. My real desire is to see all of the quantum research effort that's gone on in Australia translate into something for the country and to benefit the country, whether that's in biology, for security, communications. I think Australia's really well set to benefit from all that investment, and really hoping that this can translate into new industries for Australia, and that we can avoid what happened with the semiconductor industry being Australia sort of missing that boat to a large extent, and instead being able to really benefit from the quantum investment and have exciting and interesting careers for people as well.
Fantastic, Emma. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And there's so much talent in the room here. I think the future of quantum sensing technology is exciting. And I'd just like everyone to join me in thanking our panel for today. Thanks very much for the conversation.